Hello there and welcome to a new lesson. In this one we are going to be creating the sprites that then we're going to be using in our combat action buttons, okay? So remember that actually our player is going to be able to cast some combat actions such as the basic hit, the heal, and the fireball. So in order to make that happen, we're going to be using some buttons. And we will start off by creating this sprite, these sprites, okay? So to have everything a little bit organized, here on the sprites folder I will create a new group that it basically means a new folder, and I will name this one combat actions. And now let's actually create these sprites. So let's create it over here. I'm going to call it SPR underscore CA, that would stand for combat action button. Okay, I have actually created a folder and all that because I will actually then have a second sprite that I'm going to be using for when the button is hovered. Basically this will allow me to change a little bit the button color, that will give a good feeling to the player and a good visual feel, okay? But we will get to that in a future lesson, okay? In this one we will just create the sprites. So in this case we're going to resize our canvas once again. So here actually the size that I want for my button is something like 320 by 64. So I will basically apply this. Okay, so yes, indeed here we have our button, and let's now actually create the sprites of it. So let me actually make this a little bit smaller so that we can see the interface a little bit better. So for my button I will firstly create a 2 pixels border, okay, that it's going to be complete white. So in this case I will basically use a rectangle tool outline, okay, and I will try here to create it. Okay, it may be a little bit difficult at the very beginning, so there we go, and let's make it bigger like this. Okay, then let's move. Actually, let's try to make it from scratch correctly. So this is going to be right there. Okay, there we go. Yeah, this is perfect. Yes, it is. And now we'll do the exact same thing, but again, or we may actually just use here the paint brush, but well, this may take a little bit more time, or maybe the line tool could help us here as well. So there we go. Now let's do the exact same thing but over here. So let's here draw this line, okay, over here and over here, like this. With the wheel of your mouse, while you are pressing it, you are going to be able to also move. Perfect. Right here as well. And the only left one is this one. Okay, we are about to finish it, and there we go. Okay, now in order to actually fill in this with some color, okay, I will use a blue color. So I will first select the fill tool, and then in this menu I already have created here a color, so you can go ahead and basically copy it. So there you go, you can go ahead and copy it. I will then press OK, and I will fill it in. Let me actually rename this button because this is going to be my hover button. And now I will duplicate it and I will create like the normal button. Okay, so let's erase this and press enter, and there we have it. And now in this new sprite, I will edit the image, and this time I will modify the color and I will create a brighter color. That the code is the following, that you can go ahead and copy it, or you can create your own color. And once again with the fill tool. Okay, there we go. So as you can see, this one is the normal button and this one is the hover button. So they are like similar because they are both blue, but the hover is much darker. The difference will actually be much easier to spot. Will make much more sense everything when we actually create this effect in a future lesson. Okay, but for now we have already set up both sprites. So I will see you in the following. Hello there and welcome to a new lesson. In this one we'll start creating the combat action buttons parent. Okay, so basically we're going to be creating a parent that then will have as its children all the different combat action buttons. Okay, so we'll have one main node, one main object, sorry, and from that object we're going to have the different objects that will be the combat action buttons. What this is going to allow us is to have some predefined properties, some predefined variables for all of our buttons, and therefore it is going to be much easier to implement more combat actions than the ones that we will actually be implementing. Once again, this is going to make much more sense right now that we are going to be creating this. So inside of the objects folder, I will go ahead and first of all create a brand new folder that I will call combat actions, as we did in our sprites. And over here we'll create a brand new object that I'm going to be calling obj ca, that will stand for combat action button parent. Okay, so as I was telling you, the main advantage of having a parent object is the fact that you're going to be able to define some variables that are going to be shared, that then you are going to be able to modify in all of its children. Okay, so of course all these variables are going to be declared in the create event. So let's go ahead and firstly delete all this description, and we're going to have two strings. One of that strings is going to be display name, and this is going to be an empty string initially, and then we will actually assign a string in the different children. Okay, basically we will inherit this create event in the different combat action buttons that we are going to be creating, and we will modify this variable. Okay, so the display name is going to be the text that then is going to be displayed in our UI buttons once we create them in our screen. So basically this is the text that will say, for example, basic hit and the damage. Okay, or heal and the heal amount, or fireball and the damage. Okay, then we are also going to be having the action type that is going to be a string. So basically this will determine if the action type will do some damage, or if it will heal a character, etc. And finally we'll have two integers, damage, that is going to be 0 initially. Once again we'll set this variable in the corresponding children, and the heal amount. Okay, so depending on the exact combat action, we're going to either be doing some damage or healing. Okay, and these two variables will determine how much damage is done and how much heal is increased, how much health is increased. Probably this feels a little bit disconnected, like from the reality, from the game. So let's actually try to start using this with a quick test, okay? So that we actually understand how these properties are going to be used. So first of all, let's go to our room game, and here we'll create a brand new assets layer. Okay, and I will call this asset layer, okay, square. Okay, you can rename this by right clicking and then rename layer, or by pressing F2. So if you remember from the introduction, we had here some kind of square, actually a rectangle, a blue rectangle over here, and then on top of that rectangle we had the buttons. Okay, so I first want to create that very simple UI that we are going to create it in just a second, and then I will start actually positioning the combat action buttons that then we are going to be able to let's say, connect to this parent and actually start using. And why I'm using here a new asset layer, okay? Because our square, okay, will not have any kinds of functionality besides rendering the image, okay? Basically, besides rendering that kind of square. So as it is just going to be a sprite, as if it were something like this, any asset from here, we're going to be using an asset layer. Because, for example, if we select the instances layer, that it is an instance layer, and we try to drag and drop any object, it will work. But if we drag and drop any sprite, it will tell us that this can't be done, that this should be done in an asset layer, okay? So that is why we have actually created this asset layer. So let's actually go ahead and quite quickly create this square. So here in the sprites, let's right click and create, and finally sprite. We'll call the SPR square. As simple as that. I will actually then modify its size on the room itself. That's why here I have no need of modifying its size here. What I will do is basically here set its color. Once again, I do have here the color that you can go ahead and copy it. So here we go. Make sure that you are using this color. You can use other if you want, but if you want to actually follow along completely in the course, just make sure that you're using this code. And then with the bucket tool or fill tool, fill this in. And now in the room game, having selected your square asset layer, you can drag and drop this sprite, okay, and it will work. Now this is quite simple, okay? We'll just position it right here, and I will, let me zoom in a little bit so that it is easier to see. And I will make this a little bit bigger, like something like that, and then something like this, okay? Super simple. And let me also make it a little bit taller, exactly like that. Okay, then if we actually need to, or if you want, you can adjust its height as needed. And now let's actually create our first combat action button. So I will right click here on the folder, and then over here I will create this new object, and I will call it obj underscore basic hit button, okay, like this. And now I will use a brand new layer in order to render these buttons, okay, because I want them to render above the square layer. So also to get to be able to keep things organized, I will use a brand new layer. In this case, as the button is an object, we're going to need an instance layer, because it isn't like the case in the sprite square that it is just a sprite, so it should be put inside of an asset layer. So we're going to be creating this new instance layer. So let's go ahead over here and add the new instance layer. I will rename it to something like buttons. Okay, and here I'm going to actually be able to put all of my combat action buttons. Also, before doing that, let's open up again our basic hits button, and let's load in the corresponding sprite. That would be the one that doesn't have the hover effect. And now over here, making sure that you are inside of the buttons layer, let's drag and drop here this button so that at least we can see it, okay? It doesn't really matter where. Also, let's set its parent to be the button parent, so we can actually just load it in quite quickly. So this is going to be this object. And when this happens, you will see that you have this new create event that, as you can see here, it tells us that it comes, let's say, from the parent, okay? And if we try to open it up, it seems that it is locked, so we can't actually edit it if we try to. So what we're going to be doing right here is right click on it and inherit event, okay? So let me delete all that. And now we are inheriting this create event, which means that the create event of the objca button parent is also happening on this obj basic hit button. At the same time, this means that we do have access to all the variables such as display name, etc. So just to do something quite quick, I will set, for example, display name to be equal to basic hit, and I will then show it in a simple message, okay? So as you can see, when we play, we do have here our message printed, which means that indeed we were able to modify the variable inside of the parent object. This was just a test for you to understand how we are able to inherit an event, modify its properties, etc. And basically this is going to be used in the future lessons. So let's just erase these lines. We are still going to be inheriting the event, and we are going to be setting all the variables up and the rest of combat action buttons in the following lessons. So I will see you there. Hello, in this lesson we are going to create all the combat action buttons. Okay, we actually have created the basic hit button, and we should also write here the different variables, basically define the values of the variables that we have defined in the parents of it. So we are going to be doing two things. First of all, create all the objects for the combat action buttons, and then inside of their create events, we will modify the variables. Okay, I will start off by duplicating this object, the basic hits button. You can do this by right clicking and clicking duplicate, or with the shortcut Ctrl D. And the next one I'm going to call it obj fireball button. Okay, I will duplicate this object again, and I will call it heal button. Okay, so now let's actually modify their variables. So in the basic hit button, firstly let's set the display name. Basically, remember, this is the text that then is going to be displayed in the button once we draw the text. Okay, so in this case it will say, we're going to follow a similar pattern in all of the buttons. So the pattern is going to be something like the action name itself, basic hit, and then between parentheses I will write the damage or the heal amount, in this case 5 damage, like this. Then the action type, in this case, is going to be attack. Okay, because we are going to be attacking the other character. And finally, the damage, in this case I will set it to something like 5. The good thing about using parent node is the fact that you can add, first of all, as many buttons, as many combat actions, let's say in this case, and it is super easy to modify the text. Okay, here you can write any text, and then when we actually draw this text, you're going to be able to modify it to your own liking. Okay, so this is one of the main advantages of using the parent node. So now in the fireball and heal, it's going to be super similar. So we have to open it up, and in the create event we can't, well, here we do have access to the event inherited, since we duplicated it from the basic hit button that was already inheriting the event. But if not, you have to right click on the create event, and a button here to inherit the event would appear, as we have shown in the previous lesson. So over here for the fireball button, once again the display name is going to be fireball, and 3 between parentheses 3 damage. Okay, like this. Secondly, the action type is going to be attack once again, because this will do some damage to the character once it collides with it. And in this case the damage is going to be a little bit less, let's say something like 3. Finally, in the heal button, we're going to be setting its display name to be heal, okay, 5 HP. Its action type this time is going to be heal, and the heal amount is going to be 5. For your reference, these are values that I created on my own after trying out the game while I was creating it, and these are values that actually will work just well, but always feel free to adjust, for example, how your names are going to be displayed, the amount of the heal amount, the damage, etc. So it's a system that is quite flexible in those terms. Now let's actually get to position them, because here we do have them in the buttons layer. Okay, we only have the basic hit. So let's actually, for example, drag and drop here the heal button. Okay, make sure that you are inside of the buttons layer. and there we go. Okay, you can use the grid that GameMaker provides in order to be able to make sure that your button is indeed correctly aligned, or you can even just turn this off and you will also find these like layout elements that will help you position everything as it should. So there we have it actually. Okay, so this is our heal button over here, and this one is our basic hit button. And now here we're going to have a challenge. Okay, so positioning things in screen in the room like manually is a pretty interesting system that we have here, because it will allow us to avoid drawing them by the draw or drawgy events in our game, because it is more visual. As you can see here, to align them I didn't have to do any calculation, add any code. It is visual and simple. That is why when it is possible, it is better to just do the UI manually, okay, instead of by code. So the challenge here is going to be two things. Okay, so you will have to add the fireball button on the bottom of them, of these two buttons, and then you will actually have to select both. Basically you select one and then you hold down control and you can select the other one, and you will also have to align them to the square, okay, that we have created. And yes, actually here, in order to center them, you should use basically here the grid, and they would be centered. Okay, so you have to do this exact same thing. Basically add, drag and drop inside of the buttons layer the last button, that would be the heal, the fireball button, and basically make sure that they are centered in the square sprite. So I hope you had a chance of doing this. So I will drag and drop here my fireball button. Okay, I will disable the grid just a moment in order to be able to position this. There it is. Actually, let me just move them a little bit closer so that the border isn't that big, like this. Okay. You can still make them to look like this if you really want to, but I feel that there is so much border. And then, well, I will basically select the three of them by holding down control and using here the grid. Okay, I will basically center them like this. So this was all for this lesson. I will see you in the following. Hello there and welcome to a new lesson. In this one, we are going to be drawing the display names that we have set up in the parents, and then we are actually modifying in the different buttons, okay? Because, well, right now we can play, okay? But indeed in the buttons there is like no information, no nothing, okay? So let's actually start using here at least the display name. So in the button parent, that is the object that handles all of the combat action buttons, we are going to go ahead and add the draw event, okay? We have already explained the differences between draw and draw GUI, so I'm not going to explain any further about those two. As in any draw event that you will want to show the sprite, we are going to firstly make sure that we are drawing ourselves. Once that is done, this will make sure that basically this sprite right here is visible on screen. After doing that, I want to actually draw this text of the display name, but for that I'm going to use other font, because I basically want to display this text quite small, or maybe not super small, but smaller than, for example, the title of our game or the text that says play. So here I actually want to discuss two things about fonts. One thing about fonts that has two solutions, okay? So when we're creating a new font, and we are, for example, going to be reusing the font itself, in this case the press start font that we downloaded at the beginning of the course, We can of course go ahead and create a brand new font and select the font by going through that drop down, but it does take some time to find that exact font. And as we have already selected it in the previous assets that we had created, instead of creating everything from scratch, we're just going to be duplicating them and modifying their size. So I will take any of these fonts, okay, and I will press Ctrl D to duplicate it, or once again, remember that you can right click and select duplicate. So I will rename it to FNT underscore action name button, okay. I will open this up. And this is what I was telling you about. The font is already selected to use the exact same font. So the only thing that we have to modify is the size. That I will set it to be something like 10. Now in the button parent, let's actually use this font by draw set font, FNT, action name button. And now I will draw the text, okay? I will draw it in the current X and Y because I want to draw it on top of our current combat action button, and the string is going to be basically the display name that we are setting. Now this kind of works because we do see like the text, but their alignment isn't okay. We have already discussed alignment, so I'm not going to go over that again, exactly how it works, etc., the different options. But so the only thing that I will do is basically change their alignments to be on the center, because by default they are on the left, so that is causing that kind of weird behavior. So that's why I'm going to be setting it to be centered and draw set be align middle. And now when we try out our game again, this isn't taking effect since the problem here is that we do have here the draw event in our parent, but as you can see, they don't exist somehow in the children. So to avoid this, let's go to the children itself, close their events tab, open them again, and now yes, we do have here the draw event inheriting correctly. So let's do the same thing here. There we go, and in the heal button, same thing. Okay, there we go. And also we have to make sure that here in our sprites it's center, okay. It is in the its anchor, sorry, it's actually in the middle center of the sprites. So let's change that as well. You may actually need to reposition again your buttons, but it isn't something that will cause much problem. Let's select all three and center them again. And now we do see the corresponding combat action name. Hello there and welcome to a new lesson. In this one we are going to be changing the button state. Basically we are going to be changing each sprite when it is hover, when it is pressed, etc. And basically we are of course going to be using the combat action sprites that we had created a couple of lessons ago. So let's open up the parents of all of the buttons, and we are going to be using some events related to the mouse. First of all, we are going to start off with the left pressed. Okay, and here in the description, basically here in this place we are going to be changing to the hover sprite. Because when we, of course, while we are pressing on our button, we want to change to the hover sprite. So sprite index is going to be equal to sprca button hover. Okay. Now here, when we actually press in any of the buttons, they do change, but when I release, they don't reset their own sprite. So let's make sure that when in this case the global left is released, and why global you may be thinking about is because if I release, for example, if I start pressing right here and I release in other place that isn't inside of the button, it should still be reset. Okay, it shouldn't only reset if I release on the button. It should come back to the original sprite in any place that the left has been released, okay? So here I will write the description as well, reset sprite, and here we're going to do sprite index equal to SPR CA button. That is the default sprite. Once again, let's update here the events. So I will just close that window out and open it up again, like this and like this. Actually, here I added, I didn't add the events that I wanted. I wanted to add here the global left released, not pressed. So let's paste it over here and let's delete this one. And now you can go ahead and update them. Actually, the code should work anyway, I think. Yes, but the thing is that you don't actually see this in the events. Somehow GameMaker only updates the events tab when you close and open it up again. So it is a little bit weird because in the objects you don't have the updated events like visually, but in the background they do have the exact same events, code, etc. So we just are updating here this tab to avoid any misunderstanding, okay? Because maybe sometimes you see that you have some events and others you see that you have other events, that the events are incomplete, etc. So just to make sure that we are all on the same page, let's update here our events. And now as you can see, this works amazing because it will only change to the hover sprites if I am inside, pressing inside of it, and if I release anywhere on the screen, this is going to be working fine, as you can see. And the last thing that I want to do is to cast the combat action. Of course, we don't right now have the code, and we are not going to be adding right now the code in order to cast the combat action, but I will just do the basics for us in order for them to be able to cast the combat action more easily. So the only situation in which we want to cast this combat action is when the left mouse is released, but not globally, but locally in the button, okay? So for that, once again, we will need a brand new event that in this case is going to be left released. I will put in the description cast combat actions, and for this time I will just show a debug message, combat action cast combat action, like this, okay? And let's make sure, and now let's play, and I can see there we would be casting the combat action, and in this case, if we are not releasing inside of the button, the combat action wouldn't be casted, okay? And like this, we have finished with this lesson.